Good morning. Welcome to CAR MBS 2020. Last year, I started the conference with initials and some words, and I want to do the same thing this year. So I'm going to use the letters for MBS. And as we've lived through the pandemic, M is management. Never before has strong, clear management been needed. Direction, decisions. It's been an ongoing slew of decisions that companies have had to deal with. B, bold. Time for bold decisions, bold moves, taking a look at every element of your business and seeing what can be modified, what needs to be modified, how you can survive these trying times. And lastly, S is for symbiotic. Never before have we seen the fusion of life, business, health, everything coming together so strongly and impacting every facet of our business. And you're going to see and hear all about that in the sessions that are coming up in the next 2 days. These themes are interwoven throughout everything. Listen and learn. Enjoy. Thanks for joining.
Enjoy.
Hello and welcome from beautiful Grand Traverse Resort. I'm Bill Newman and I'm your host and moderator for this morning's Power Breakfast, sponsored by SAP and Capgemini. We've got a really fantastic lineup today, and I just want to again thank Carla and the members of CAR for this wonderful opportunity to come together today. So on behalf of the 100,000 employees of SAP, and many thanks to those of you who are our valued customers, welcome this morning. We're really excited to bring together a panel of thought leaders who can tell their stories about operational resilience here as a part of this pandemic recovery. We are with you as a part of the automotive supply chain. Again, grateful thanks to those of you who have been our customers and for those of you who continue to take this journey with us. You know, at SAP, we are definitely aware of what has gone on as a part of the pandemic and the resulting recovery and work-throughs that we're all going through. Earlier this year in March, SAP hosted a virtual automotive industry forum, and we asked you what some of the main pressing issues facing automotive companies would be, and it's no surprise. Obviously, some really critical areas in supply chain, in lost productivity, sales, as well as the impacts to people and getting folks together and back to work. In April 27th of this year, CART Group was kind enough to host a presentation by SAP and Qualtrics regarding the back to work processes that we've used in many industries and states. And that webinar is also available on the CAR webinar site. And if you have a moment, please have a look and a listen. So it's my great pleasure today to introduce our panel. Joining me today is Mike Lakovic, Vice President of Automotive at Capgemini. I'll be handing over to Mike in just a moment. We'll be followed by Soma Venkat, who's Vice President, Information Technology and Digitization at Cooper Standard, and then Justin Herman, Vice President of Information Technology at Panasonic Automotive. You're going to hear their stories. We're going to share some insights and just enjoy the morning. Grab your cup of coffee. And here we go. I'm going to hand it over to Mike. Mike, the panel is over to you for your opening thoughts and remarks. Welcome.
Well, good morning, Bill, and good morning to our audience members. And for those who've joined us this morning, it is a pleasure to be with my friend and colleague, Bill Newman from SAP, and always an honor to share the floor with my clients, Soma Venkat and Justin Herman from Panasonic. For those that may not be aware, Capgemini is a global consultancy with roughly 270,000 employees, and we consider ourselves to be a client-obsessed transformation partner. Now, what that means is that our agenda is your agenda, and your ability to grow and evolve in the market and achieve the ambitions that you have for your company. We consider ourselves to be a comprehensive provider with traditional consulting, business consulting, and systems integration, as well as an extremely strong focus on innovation and digital agency, and a very strong focus on research and development and core engineering, including embedded systems. We have a roughly $1 billion automotive global practice, which spans all of the reaches of the industry, from the OEs to the suppliers, fleet providers, and innovation partners, including a number of the newer market entrants and startups and others. We're proud of the breadth of our portfolio in supporting all of the major areas of the industry, including what we consider to be the full C-suite, from research and development through supporting functions. We take pride in knowing you, knowing your customer, your market, as well as your products and services, which takes us to today's focus around the COVID impact. And for all of us in the industry, we were already adjusting to major disruptions. And today's and tomorrow's agenda is touching on a number of those mega themes and mega trends. Capgemini and our Capgemini Research Institute have been tracking a number of those mega trends, and here we'll just talk about a few. The notion of connectivity. Data, I believe, is now simply ubiquitous. It permeates every aspect of all that we do, from the consumption, collection, interrogation, monetization. There's whole new domains opening up to us on what we can do with this notion of connected platforms and connected vehicles. Here we have a data point that says the projected size of just the telematics industry alone is $103 billion by 2022. Electrification, we were already dealing with, changing so many aspects of all that we have to address in the market, changing the core product, the powertrain, the software and embedded systems, including the influence of governments around the world, improving and accelerating our sustainability concepts and how we reduce our carbon footprint. All of these now permeate all of what we do. Our ecosystem partnerships have opened up whole new opportunities for many of our, for many areas of the industry on new technologies, new innovations, and also whole new go-to-market channels. So it isn't just the product, but it's also how we bring the product to bear, how we engage our consumers, how we engage our users and in the field. And then finally, the notion of autonomous. And with a particular focus here on the idea of last mile, because we really see a focus in the commercial space on getting closer to autonomous in that last mile delivery. Of course, we all hear about how drones will be delivering pizza soon enough, but this isn't just drones. It's also the idea that ride-sharing concepts, products and services, and how we consume those begin to change. And so, boy, we were already addressing that, weren't we? In every day in all of our strategy. And then the pandemic has occurred. And so this has really exacerbated those existing disruptions. We've seen a collapse of business models with consumers simply not going to the retail channels. Fortune.com indicates businesses that don't have at least 20% of their sales online risk permanently losing those. There's a struggle to engage the customers and employees. When we lose that physical touch and move to virtual, like we have today, certain aspects of how we engage one another on a very human level change. Unstable and unclear supply chains. Bill just referenced this. Fortune said that 94% of Fortune 1000 companies have witnessed supply chain disruptions. Many of you here today are probably still dealing with that. We also have a lack of corporate governance. 2 of 5 businesses didn't have contingency plans. Now, I would hope sitting here in early August, I would hope certainly all of us now have contingency plans on how we help address the health and safety of all of our employees. And of course, we're overwhelmed with business tools and technologies. Many of our investments simply were not geared towards this kind of disruption. And of course, those impacts have flourished throughout the industry, but there's hope. we're starting to see those signs of recovery. In the OEs, we've restarted production. Not at full rate across the industry, but we've started. The suppliers have restarted production. Supply chains are starting to come back into a more efficient and effective delivery model. Dealerships have adjusted their retail channels and their customer experience. Some will struggle, but others have thrived in this new digital and connected era. And then finally, consumers. They've already changed their buying patterns. And we've seen in that consumer space some interesting trends that have already taken hold. Capgemini Research Institute conducted a global survey with over 11,000 respondents, representing 62% of the global buying capacity. And what we've seen is that there is a desire and a trend back towards individual mobility. For years, we've been talking about ride-sharing concepts and fleets, and the idea that this next generation or even the current generation isn't interested necessarily in driving. I have 2 teenage daughters. They're not concerned necessarily about getting their license the way that I certainly was, and maybe you were when you turned that age. But what we're seeing is this pandemic has really brought back some of those traditional concepts of individual mobility. 44% of our respondents want to increase the use of private vehicles solely as a result of this pandemic. 11% want to buy a new vehicle solely because of this pandemic, and 76%, an astounding figure, currently perceive public transportation as unsafe or very unsafe. Certainly an opportunity to improve those concepts and perceptions there. We're also seeing, though, that targeted offers can convince buyers back into the marketplace. 59% would come back on an attractive price. 49% in the bottom right now expect new products and services. Don't hope, expect new products and services. So those are telling signs that indicate that while there has been an impact, there's also an opportunity. And we believe that companies can accelerate that recovery and growth out of this downturn, that in every crisis, there's an opportunity. And by making the right decisions, an organization can come back stronger. And we believe that there's an opportunity to accelerate that restart. And as you see here, our blue line suggests that there's new opportunities, new products and services on how to do that. So I will leave you this morning as a small thought piece on the Capgemini Supplier Recovery Framework. We spent some time with some of our customers, as well as looking at what we believe is really the recovery framework, and in this case, the supplier community. And it really comes down to this notion of accelerating the restart and taking advantage of a reinvention opportunity. Those opportunities do exist, and the data suggests strongly that in this market, there will be winners and there might not be. And I would encourage all of us this week, as we listen to all of our speakers, to think about and explore what our individual growth opportunities are and how can we come out of this stronger. Appreciate your time this morning. Bill, I'll hand it back to you.
Well, that's great. Thanks, Mike. And you know, we do talk at SAP about coming back better. And so I think that you really echoed on some of those points. We may wobble a little bit as we come back better, but that's just kind of part of working ourselves out of kind of the place that we've been. Mike, thanks. We're going to come back to you in just a moment. Next up, I want to introduce Soma Venkat from Cooper Standard. Soma is the Vice President of Information Technology and Digitization. Soma, good morning. How are you?
Very good, Bill. Good morning. Thank you, Mike, for the good introduction on that and talk about the state of state right now. Let me talk a little bit about Cooper Standard. So Cooper Standard as a company is a tier 1 automotive supplier, and its revenue in 2019 was $3.1 billion. So Bill, are you seeing my slides?
We are seeing your slides. Thank you, Soma.
Thank you. And it's a tier 1 automotive with traditional OEMs as our customers, And also we have a play in a diverse market, which is outside automotive as well. As a culture, Cooper Standard has leading market positions across all these product lines. We have three major product lines. One is sealing systems. We are number one globally in that. Number two is fuel and brake delivery systems. Number two globally. And fluid transfer systems is number three globally. The important piece is we have a culture of winning. And if we don't see a clear path to being in the top, we exit. And also, one of the major DNAs of our culture has been collaborate, innovate, and accelerate. Having that kind of a winning culture, it's also very important how we do it. We were rated the top most ethical companies by Ethisphere in 2020. I think it's also part of our DNA to be doing things in the right and the most ethical way. With the disruptions happening across, even before COVID-19, we have seen automotive making major changes as an industry. Cooper Standard Products has been very well placed to go ahead and manage in either standard internal combustion or a hybrid, all electric or autonomous. Actually, our market share or per content per vehicle has gone up with these new innovations. And that's partly because also of our internal innovations of creating newer products and getting ready for these kind of changes. Cooper Standard also has a global footprint. And this is very important, particularly in today's discussion about having a global view and how do we collaborate and how it impacts globally in a crisis like COVID-19, and how can we respond as a global company. Advanced technology is another major part of our culture, and we have leveraged the discipline of automotive, and we have tried to diversify into other industries as well. And this was validated during this crisis, but we have done material licensing. We leveraged the manufacturing and the material science expertise within our own company and started taking our products in other areas, wire and cable, building and construction, industrial and consumer area, commercial and recreational, including athletic shoes, and a few areas on that. These things, we leverage the automotive discipline and we have taken the materials and gone out. All these things we do together with a strong foundation. We have a Cooper Standard Foundation where we give back to the community. Looking forward to the discussion more. Thank you.
And thank you, Soma. I really appreciate that. And we do want to talk a lot about the culture that Cooper Standard has taken and addressed as a part of the pandemic, as a part of our roundtable. Next up, I'd like to introduce Justin Herman, CIO and Vice President of Information Technology with Panasonic. Good morning, Justin. How are you?
Morning, Bill. Doing good, and yourself?
Well, thank you. And impressive you're in the office today, so thank you. Looking crisp today.
You're welcome. So, good morning, everyone. Let me just get my screen up here. So, first off, I just want to say thank you to Carl for having me and giving me this opportunity to share some of what Panasonic Automotive does within the industry. And I trust that everyone is keeping safe and well. Panasonic Automotive was founded in April of 2003, and we're headquartered right here in Peachtree City, Georgia. For those of you not familiar with Peachtree City is known as that town within Georgia that has over 100 miles of golf cart paths, so we can get pretty much anywhere within the golf cart. We have approximately 7,000 employees within Panasonic Automotive. 1,200 of those are within Peachtree City and Farmington Hills, with just a little or close to $3 billion in sales. We are a premier provider of innovative and environmentally responsible in-vehicle systems and devices that contribute to society, and we believe this is designing the next generation of automotive mobility. I want to share with you the 7 key pillars of technology that we believe provide total system capability within the car itself. These are infotainment connectivity, our audio solutions, our e-cockpit vision, comfort and safety, energy, and our security. I'm not going to go over each one of these, but I will touch on infotainment, which we believe will integrate more functions of the cockpit in our next generation vehicles. And we believe that our software and communications cloud platform, OneConnect, will be the bridge between the sensors being enabled, our real-time maps, and data for improved accuracy for those next generation of vehicles. In addition to the car itself, Panasonic has partnered with Harley-Davidson. We have e-bikes, but I wanted to share with you some of the work we're doing with the Colorado Department of Transportation on RoadX. For those of you who are not familiar with this, the goal of this is to have real-time data shared between vehicles and infrastructure and people, really to improve the safety and mobility on our roads. This V2X technology that we are working with the Colorado Department of Transportation with really is going to improve the safety of vehicles on the road and infrastructure. In addition to Colorado, we are also expanding this out to various other departments of transportation. The next slide just really shows you some of our partners. Typically, you would see our OEMs up here, but I wanted to share with you some of the partners we use in software, our operating systems we work with, and the microprocessors and controllers. So I look forward to the discussion, and Bill, I'll hand it back to you.
Great. Thanks, Justin. Really appreciate the work that you and Soma and Cooper Standard and Panasonic are doing to work through the pandemic recovery. If I could ask all of the panelists to come back onto the video, we'll go ahead and get started with the moderated conversation. So one of the things that we've talked about, and we're trying to work our way back up to that steady state of everybody getting back to operations. I think we're going to hear this week that we're somewhere between 90-95% back to work. We've done the right things to keep as Justin, you said, to be safe and well and to keep our workers safe. Maybe Soma, we can talk a little bit about how some of this adversity in terms of coming back to work, in your opinion, I think you've used the expression adversity builds character, helping some of Cooper Standard's OE customers as well as the community. And I think you touched on the Cooper Standard Foundation. So maybe you could share a little bit about your experience around how adversity builds character.
Thank you, Bill. I think we are at unprecedented times nowadays with COVID-19, and pretty much it has obliterated any standard norms as we know. But it's important for us at this time that it's very personal in a lot of ways. People are getting affected, lives are getting affected, and during these times, it's important that the company can survive only if the culture is strong. And we have a joke here saying that nothing does digital transformation faster like a crisis like COVID-19. It's probably the digital transformation officer of the world today. So, and it's, I think, forced a lot of people, because it's fact of survival today that if you don't transform digitally, it gets very difficult to survive at this point. If you are doing all paper-based work where you have to sign in paper, it's almost not possible with people sitting remote. So in Cooper Standard, we have built in a lot of work earlier, and the culture was built around people to help each other as well. I think that's two important pieces. So we have, from a digital transformation wise, we put on Zoom long time ago, which was one of the first ones in the automotive area to go into Zoom, which really helped us during this crisis. So it's a question of saying, how did we build on top? It's not going to happen immediately. You can't react and win at this point. You have to be able to have a strong background to fight it out. And the main piece here is you talk about people and culture and Cooper Standard Foundation. We had a kind of a culture of giving before, and giving not just from the top, but each employee, each plant, each person was individually giving. When this thing hit us, it was really, as another employee, it was really heartwarming to see people across the globe in various parts were making masks from the company. I mean, from as part of the company employee perspective, they were giving out to the local hospitals, to the frontline workers, and that piece of that really makes that you're bonded together much better. And even as Cooper Standard as a company, when OEMs are innovative and innovating themselves in their factories to provide ventilator equipment, we as suppliers to OEMs started providing equipment and supplies which would help in the ventilator business, the rubber extrusion and things like that. This actually gives a new type of bonding with OEMs. When I say adversity builds character, it's important to see that we have been traditional. Okay, we ask you to do this part of automotive. But when it is a crisis, when you're working shoulder to shoulder to try to solve a problem, and we believe this is a positive thing in some level, it's a silver lining that we get new types of relationships built with our OEMs as we move forward. And that's something which I think very important for us, and something which is going to keep us stronger as we move forward.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that. Justin, I know at Panasonic, culture plays a really huge, important part of your business. Maybe you could share about how individual and company culture has kind of worked together hand in glove as you've moved from this cold start to a very effective ramp up in your business.
Yeah, Bill, you are correct. Culture is an extremely important part of Panasonic Automotive. You know, I didn't truly understand that until this crisis hit us, and I'm sure many other folks didn't. But our CHRO, Stephen Childs, always references how in times of crisis, people fall back on the culture of the company. You know, and what does that mean? When I look at the principles and the behaviors espoused by our company, things like cooperation and team spirit, adaptability, untiring effort for improvement, all of these are core principles that we fall back on during these times. So when this all started, just like everyone else, you know, we first looked at the supply side and how we're going to get everything in and continue with our supply chain. And then within a month, we had to pivot to the demand side, right? And you know, the drop in demand, how do we deal with that? And it truly was our people coming together with creative and innovative solutions on how to do that. And not only that, doing it while being disrupted with the technology platforms that we had to provide them from the new work from home situation, which was incredible to see the adaptability of that. And then as we went further into it, you know, how do you protect your people, which is obviously a #1 priority for us, while still engaging our OEM customers and showing them how we are able to address some of their needs throughout this pandemic. And to see the creativity of our folks within the workforce, both on the operations side, the front office as well, in how they take technology and create videos to show the OEMs how we continue to innovate and provide these solutions, has really been fantastic to see. And it all really comes back to the core foundation of the culture that we have here at Panasonic Automotive.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's ingrained in kind of the foundation of the Panasonic charter, if you will. So it makes complete sense. Mike, you know, Capgemini as a services partner is, you know, a supplier in the automotive space as well. And you've had the pleasure, your teams have had to work with the teams from both Justin and Soma's side. How does maybe you could just share, how does teamwork and culture play as you're trying to, you know, build better and try to build new capabilities for with these companies and inside of those organization cultures?
Yeah, so having been a guest in both Panasonic Automotive and Cooperstan, and of course others, maybe brag on their organizations for just a moment on their behalf. One of the remarkable cultural aspects about their ability to react and adjust, in large part, is also based on their leadership and the individual leaders they have and the empowerment that the organization has to adapt and respond in real time. And the way their corporate governance allows for some freedom of both movement and decision-making. I'll just share a small story. In the case of Panasonic Automotive, their CEO, Scott Kirchner, personally and individually invested himself by being on site and helping, you know, rally the team in certain areas. And it's that type of seasoned leadership and that type of empowering leadership that allows companies to be both agile and resilient, because it truly is that teamwork that will be able to speed and accelerate these changes and adaptations. And that corporate governance and that sense of empowerment really can be an enabler, or in some cases, it could be a constraint. And here we have two organizations automotive industry, one could say that the automotive industry is, conservative and what have you, but I would argue the opposite. I would argue that what we've seen in the past 5 years with our ongoing disruptions, and in particular now, was a simply remarkable response, a true industry-wide response to this pandemic, and the ability to change on a dime. And in large part, it has been enabled by that sense of community and that sense of true leadership and empowerment.
Yeah, certainly that that cohesiveness and working together is extremely important. So, gentlemen, let's ask the big question in the room, because you hear it a lot and everybody uses it. I know I use it in terms of the word resilience and kind of where we go from here and how do we, come back better. Justin, let's start with you. When we're talking about resilience from a Panasonic perspective, what are some of the end goals and end states that you have in mind, and what are some of the things that Panasonic is doing now with your leadership to help guide that path forward?
Yeah, I think two key things, Bill. First is the safety and security of our people, I think, has been the number one driving factor in and guiding us in very much all of our decisions that we are making as a company, whether it's PPE equipment or ensuring that our factories can open up safely, providing them a safe and secure environment, not only for themselves and the company, but for their families as well. Really driving our decisions there, and the various processes that we've had to change in order to provide that security for the workforce. I think as we progress through this, that is going to become more and more ingrained in our decisions as well as our daily activities. And then secondly, really the technology which will help enable the workforce to continue to deliver for our customers at the high levels they expect. Not just from our ERP systems or our collaboration and technology tools as well, but just from those small consumerized products available that are infiltrating the workforce right now, and how can we leverage that to ensure that they are productive, that we can collaborate and we can communicate effectively as we enter this, what we call into the new normal right now.
Yeah, the new normal indeed. Soma, I know that, there's an old expression, you should never waste a good crisis, and Cooper Standard did a lot of work during the shutdown to, sharpen its saw and, really help put things in order as a part of coming back out of the pandemic lockdown. Maybe you could share some of the stories around what changes in processes and systems that you put in place during that time, and what were some of the unique aspects of that?
It's a great question, Bill. I think you started off saying what's resilience. To each one of us, it's a little different, right? I think from my perspective, resilience is more about inner strength. I think as an organization, it is the same thing. It's an inner strength of an organization which is going to propel it back, right? Most of that, there's a nice wording I read somewhere. During a crisis, there are some people or some organizations who are going to develop themselves. Some will actually define themselves at this time, and some will diminish. And the decision is ours, right? So the inner strength is very important. Resilience is bouncing back. I think it's a great story about what we did on that. There's a lot of excuses during this time we can give to not to do something or just maintain the status quo. But it's also important for us to leverage some of these aspects. Like Justin said, Cooper Standard also hit through, and we had to shut down a lot of plants, and not all at the same time. China went down first in early January, being a global company, right? Then it was Europe and North America. So when we are running out, we started a process of saying, let's upgrade our ERP systems into the newer technology, so to S/4HANA, SAP, together with CAP. When we are going through this, we found that, hey guys, we have a major problem right now. We cannot progress because people are not available, systems are not available because of its factories are getting down. So we had an option to say, let's stop it. Let's finish this, run it through, and then start. Instead, we took an option to say, no, we are going to accelerate, which is, as I said, in our DNA out there. And we said, we're going to use this, leverage this time, and almost 50% of the project was done remote. people sitting in remote locations. We didn't even go to the factory. We upgraded to a brand new version. As you rightly said, sharpen the saw. We went into a new version of SAP into the cloud. And what this does is this helps in our digitization efforts, but it also helps in making sure we're now diversification. So when we started off this SAP journey 10 years ago, 12 years ago, we were pure automotive, and we had a license based on automotive culture. Now we said, can I leverage that and go into other industries? So we went to the new version of S4, and it's important that I'll give you an example of collaboration which helps here. We are going through this and we are starting to do a testing. And one of the key things in automotive is about creating these labels and the boxes we ship, and the labels get scanned out there. So China started going down in January when we are testing it out, and they cannot go to their offices and where the label printers are there to print it. So what we could do was we said, instead of stopping, why don't Europe or North America print these labels, which is in Chinese, and we actually go ahead and digitize it and send it out to them where they could scan and continue the testing without stopping. Sure enough, we didn't think, as a project, we are thinking, okay, it's a China thing. Sure enough, it hit us bad in February and March when China was coming back up and we were going down hard. And it was time for China to basically do us back the favor. Our colleagues in China, and they could go back and say, scan our labels, digitize this out, and we could scan and continue. And this is very important for us to say that if I have a single system, single standardized system of how we do things, and if we can go ahead and use the same processes, it is much easier for us to kind of swim through a crisis like this. And if we have a culture on top of that to say that we collaborate, we don't become silos. These two are very important. I think this tells us no better than now to say that companies who are going to really come out stronger, right, either define themselves or develop themselves in this crisis, those are the companies who have this kind of a strong background, processes, standards to go ahead and succeed.
Yeah, those are great insights, Soma. Thank you. You know, Mike, you and I have talked a number of times about resilience and how important it is to have that flexibility and visibility of both assets as well as human resources. Maybe you could share just anecdotally a few of the things that you've learned with the Capgemini team working with Panasonic and Cooper Standard.
Yeah, I think one of the primary elements of where we see this notion of resilience is that commitment to excellence, that commitment to innovation and continual growth. Not every company has that DNA. We do see some companies that are taking a bit of a bearish response to this pandemic and hunkering down maybe a bit, as opposed to other companies that are recommitting themselves to that innovation and to that notion of growth and continued acceleration of the marketplace. And I think that's a testament as well to their position to their customers, right? And we all, again, going back to, we were already facing a number of these disruptions. Our OE partners and customers and the consumers expect and demand that all of us are innovating, whether it's through new technology, new information systems, new cultural edifices is a form of corporate innovation as well. There is that aspect to say that everyone and every participant in the automotive industry is now part of that evolving, fluid, rapidly changing ecosystem. And so I would argue that it is now a mandate, as Soma indicated, an existential mandate that these types of new formulations exist. And so we've certainly seen these companies, and here we've got two fantastic examples of two corporations that have maintained that commitment to excellence and innovation despite some of these headwinds. Now, the other, some anecdotal other items that we've seen that we're just very optimistic about. We've seen some companies say, hey, we're going to look at robotic process automation. Boy, we've talking about it for years, and this pandemic and our shift to digital has exposed many inefficiencies that before were hidden or before weren't a priority. And suddenly we see these new opportunities and we say, hey, for a measured capital investment or a redirection of resources that maybe we were going to otherwise furlough, guys, let's get after it. And so we've seen that great example of a notion of enterprise innovation and internally focused innovation that makes us more agile, more resilient. We've also seen, I'll go back to the concepts of partnerships. We've seen companies, and maybe this pandemic kind of was a necessary push along this continuum, but we've seen companies say, hey, we're more open to this idea of partnering with another company that maybe has capabilities that we don't, or capabilities that we frankly no longer can make that capital investment. The hurdle rate is it's just too high now. So that willingness to look at how to bolt on capabilities and grow together. And so, you know, that again, it's an individual and a corporate expectation and a market response as well. And so I think on the whole, what we're seeing is that most companies in their formulation are trying to adapt and recover. And I would encourage all of our audience members again this week to think about what is in some small measure or a grand enterprise transformation, but there are those opportunities. There are those opportunities to use this time to continue to sharpen our sword in this notion of business resilience. So I would encourage all of us to find those opportunities and reach out to our panelists here today. Certainly they've seen a number of these great opportunities as well.
Yeah, great points, Mike. I know at SAP, we see a lot of different fitness programs coming out of our customers. And, you mentioned RPA, some of the things around Industry 4.0, touchless processes. I think a lot of those autonomous or accelerated processes are really getting pushed on and moving forward and accelerated, like you were mentioning as well, Soma. Gentlemen, I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I'm going to take a few questions from the chat, from the audience. I promise not to put you guys too much on the spot. We're going to start with Justin. The question is, how do you see the latest technology covering safety as well as driving? Are there a lot of distractions coming through too much right now in terms of connectivity and information sharing? Justin, what are your perspectives on that?
Yeah, I wouldn't say distractions. I think from a safety perspective, there is a tremendous amount of opportunity within the vehicle itself. I mean, when you look at a car in general, you're looking at approximately 100 million lines of code within a car. It's not something you think of when you think of a car riding down the road, right? So with that comes the opportunity to leverage technology to ensure the safety of the vehicle. Which is really when I shared with everyone the RoadX initiative with the Colorado Department of Transportation and some of our other departments of transportation, that is really what we're looking at, right? How can we take systemic programming and ensure and enhance the safety of the vehicle and the people driving in it, but then also looking at the infrastructure opportunities and how our cars talk to each other to better enable those that can provide the access to the infrastructure, whether it be roads or whatever that might be, to ensure a safety for our people and really for our vehicles as well. So I'm not sure if that answered the question, but
hey, no, Bill, I might beg the opportunity to chime in here. And one of the trends that we all see, right? People on their phones while driving. It is an unsafe habit. It shouldn't happen. And there's been this, sort of ongoing debate of whether the phone becomes the infotainment or whether we'll still continue to see embedded systems. In this notion of safety, embedded systems are far superior to staring at your phone while trying to be safe. And so we would look at these types of systems as saying the more capability, and Panasonic certainly is a top tier provider in these capabilities, the more embedded systems that we have as part of that vehicle experience, frankly, we believe the safer you'll be rather than staring at your phone.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and Mike, you and I have talked about the importance of the front seat driver experience versus the back seat or passenger experience. And at some point, the nature of vehicles may actually tip in terms of what we provide in terms of the experience and what systems we put in place for consumers to use, for sure. Soma, there's a question for you. Again, I'm not going to try to put you too much on the spot here. How are the sealing systems challenges different with the new age of electrical vehicles when compared to a traditional vehicle?
It's a great question. I think sealing systems, I mean, one of the core pieces here, if you see in an electrical or a hybrid vehicle, is there's not much engine noise. So actually our content per vehicle goes up. So the expectation of a driving experience is that it has to be quieter. So the sealing systems has to be even more robust. So what we have seen in Cooper Standard is we have already set up some time and effort to build a new type of innovations in Fortrex and other areas, which really helps in this kind of a problem where we can provide a much superior product which helps in reducing the road noise. And actually, and that's really working out very well for Cooper Standard on that, and that's going to catch up as we move forward. It's a great question on that, but also it's important to know that things are changing. Going back to your previous question about technology, it's technologies, not as companies, it's technologies. We created the problem of giving a lot of these tools and toys, right? It was not available before we provided that. We have to provide a solution to be safer and secure. So it's not shutting down and saying you cannot see that, which is not working naturally. Is we have to provide that solution. It's great to see the autonomous vehicles coming up and things like that as well.
That's great. Thanks for that, and thanks to our audience for sending in those questions. So, gentlemen, as we wrap up today, I'm going to give each of you about 30 seconds to give a charge to our fellow colleagues. What's the one or two things that they really need to be doing to come back better, make it through this pandemic recovery, and to be successful moving forward? Justin, we'll start with you.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. So I'll leave you with two things. I think Mike touched on this a little bit earlier, right? I think as technologists, we need to challenge the status quo, challenge our existing business processes, and provide the tools and capabilities to our business that will enable them to continue to provide the service to our customers at a level that provides safety for our people and helps them deliver everything that we need to deliver for our customers while definitely taking safety into account. So those would be the two things I'll leave everyone with.
Thank you, Justin. Soma, what's your charge to call to action for our colleagues and attendee guests today?
Yeah, I think the new norm is here to stay in some areas for sure. So I would suggest or challenge the technologies around that. Innovation is going to be the way it's going to happen as we move. In automotive specifically, we have to accelerate. The ideas of having projects for 5 years, 4 years is gone. Let's accelerate, let's deliver fast, let's be very agile. So two pieces on that: innovate and be agile and deliver faster. These are the two things which we are going to happen. And something for technologists to do is these machines internally right now can be connected, can be digitized. This whole IIoT is here, it's real. We have done our own stuff on that. And AI, this is there to stay. And Cooper Standard has done some great work on that stuff, which has helped our company. So the challenge is innovate, continue to innovate, use your data, and also make sure that you're agile and you're adapting.
Thanks, Soma. Mike, 30 seconds. What's your call to action for our guests today?
I'll play off both my colleagues here. Number one, be willing to experiment and fail fast. This new marketplace doesn't have years of experimentation before you can choose to do something or not. There is an opportunity in this notion of agile to experiment, fail fast, and learn where to grow. And then number two, I want to go back to and re-emphasize this concept of these cultural edifices that allow our businesses to grow and adapt and be resilient. Absolutely critical for winners to be willing to fail, be willing to experiment. And I would encourage all of our listeners today and all of the audience members, great opportunity the next couple of days. Thank you, Car Group, for this opportunity for all of us. A lot of great discussions that are forthcoming, and we certainly hope that this Power Breakfast not only gave you a quick coffee break, but also started to get those innovative ideas rolling for everyone. So thanks, Bill, and thanks to Car Group.
Yeah, and thank you, Mike, and special thanks to our guests today, Justin Herman from Panasonic, Soma Venkat from Cooper Standard, my partner in crime, Mike Lakovic from Capgemini. I'm Bill Newman with SAP. Thank you all very much for attending our Power Breakfast this morning. Enjoy the next couple of days. Reach out to us in the virtual booth if you have any questions. Again, be safe, be well, and come back better. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great morning and a great week. Bye now.